here's a question for you. Do you know right now, today, whether your consulting business is actually profitable this month? Not at the end of the year when you're sitting with your accountant, but right now. If you hesitated or felt your stomach drop a little, you're not alone. In today's episode, Nancy Ward, a financial coach who specializes in working with solopreneurs, shares something that will shift how you think about money in your business. She says, money is a language, and I'm still learning it. Think about that for a second. You're not supposed to know everything already. You're learning a language. And just like any language, it takes practice, patience, and the right teacher. My name is AJ Riedel. This is Thriving Through, the podcast where each week I have real conversations with self-employed consultants about what it really takes to build a sustainable, profitable, and fulfilling consulting practice. Nancy's journey to becoming a financial coach started with $40,000 in credit card debt and a determination to never pay interest fees again. But what makes this conversation so valuable for consultants is what she discovered when she pivoted her practice from working with individual consumers to working exclusively with solopreneurs. She found that most of us are using personal credit cards to fund our businesses, mixing personal and business expenses, and have absolutely no idea if we're making money until tax season arrives. If this hits a little too close to home, this episode is for you. Nancy breaks down the essential systems every consultant should have from day one, shares her approach to untangling the financial chaos most solopreneurs live in, and demonstrates exactly how to create an elevator pitch so clear that people at networking events respond with, "That's me." Whether you're just starting your consulting practice or you've been at it for years, but still can't quite get a handle on your finances, this conversation offers practical wisdom and a much needed dose about what you're supposed to know. Let's dive in. Welcome, Nancy Ward, to the Thriving Through podcast. I'm delighted to see you today.
Yes, thank you so much, AJ, for having me.
What was your path to being a self-employed consultant?
Well, I can give you the long version or I can give you the short version because my long version goes all the way back to when I was a kid. I just loved math. And I was a Girl Scout and I was knocking on people's doors and I swear I was born to be an entrepreneur from such a young age. But over the course of my years, I've had different jobs and I've always had a passion to help people. When I was in college, I went and walk into my classes and they're like, "Hey, you want to get a credit card? I'll give you a free t-shirt." And I'm like, "Yeah, sure. I don't know anything about credit cards." So anybody who's a Gen Xer watching this is thinking, "Yeah, that was me walking on college campus and just getting the credit card scheme coming my way." But at that time, I was away from home, hours away from home, and said, "Sure, I'll get a credit card and I'll eventually pay it off." And I didn't really understand how money worked. And fast forward a little bit longer, and I was $40,000 in credit card debt.
Oof.
And how do I know that? Because I'm a numbers person. Right. Plus, I had a car payment, and I remember one day coming back to my mom's house. It was about 4 hour drive away, and she's like, "I can't believe you got this new car." I said, "But Mom, they gave it to me at like 0% or 1%, 4% financing." She's like, "Yeah, but you have so much credit card debt." I'm like, "Yeah, but I pay my bills every month. I'm not behind. I haven't bounced. I mean, I'm justifying everything." To say, "Yeah, Mom, I have $40,000 in credit card debt. I'm proud of it." Why would I ever? I don't know. But again, I was good with numbers. I was at a point where I had a balance and then I did a balance transfer on top of that and then a promotional on top of that. What in the world was I thinking? So fast forward, I got married. We took care of all the debt. I started raising my kids, having children. I have two of them. And as some lives life you, we ended up getting a divorce. And I said, I do not want to do this ever again where I get in such a spot of being in such debt that this is going to happen to me again. No, I refuse. I'm not going to pay the interest fees. I'm not legally. I'm going to try to my best to avoid paying the interest fees. And I was like, you know what? There has got to be other people that are out there in the same boat as I am, not knowing how to do this. I'm a numbers person just by nature. There's so many other people that are out there. And I developed the weekly debt plan years ago because I said I can send a little bit of money every single week to my debtor and it'll be paid off. And I had a spreadsheet, of course, of all of how I was going to pay it off with no interest. It was deferred interest, which is to me one of the worst types of interest to have if you do end up getting that deferred interest payment that's on your bill. But I made sure I paid it off before that payment was due for the fact that I didn't want to pay any interest. And somebody said, well, why don't you help other people and be a coach and help them with their finances? I thought, okay, well, that's a novel idea. So I started doing that as a part-time. And a few years ago, back in 23, I said, okay, I'm done with the corporate America. I'm ready to go on my own. And like I said, I'd been a serial entrepreneur all the way since 1995, and I went to the courthouse to say, hey, I have a business. I want to fill out some information about being a business and so forth. So I love what I love about this business is just helping other people. And m money may not be people's superpowers, but I look at those arts and crafts when I look at, on Facebook or Pinterest. That is not my superpower. I can't take 5 items and make something beautiful, some beautiful corsage for somebody. My brain does not work that way. It works with numbers. So
Mhm.
that is, like I said, a little short and a roundabout way in order how I got into my business. But I really, like I said, I really enjoy helping people look at their numbers in a different perspective without the constraints of budgeting.
You started out working with consumers, B2C, business to
Yes,
consumer. You
yes.
went through a pivot
Hmm.
that I think you said took you about a year to come to the realization of. So tell us about the pivot and why you made that pivot.
Well, I'm sure a lot of your listeners are thinking, yeah, I've got problems with my money, but no way I'm talking to somebody about this. No way and they're going to tell me to stop drinking my Starbucks. I could care less because it's your money. But at the end of the day, it's what are your goals? And as I was working with some of my clients, they were talking about, oh, I have this small business and should I keep doing my direct sales and having these really good conversations about things and I'm giving them business advice, not necessarily, hey, let's look at this credit card and this credit card. I was talking more business. I'm like, and I'm thinking, well, how about doing this? And, I was just doing so much encouraging. And they said, wow, this is great. Thank you so much. I'm going to apply this in my business. And I sat there and said to myself, I'm like, you probably should write off the fee to me as a business expense because you're using this is with more information to get help with your business, which then turns into paying your personal credit cards, into having, a better financial system by all means. And that was the thing is that then I realized that there's so many other solopreneurs that are out there that are using their personal credit cards in order to fund their businesses. So as I'm doing networking, yes, some of those people might be my ideal customers. Some of them might know people who are in financial situations, but finances are such a touchy subject. It's not that easy to say, "Hey, I know this lady Nancy and she helps you with your finances." Nobody's going to want to really refer that in a comfortable situation unless it's your BFF and it's like, okay, girl, it's time for you to stop shopping. as I realized that there's so many entrepreneurs that need that help because they need to figure out the best way in order to use their profits accordingly in order to whether it's the business expenses or how I can pay myself back with my business expenses that I've already spent. So yes, I have made that small pivot and I'm just amazed at how many people are like, yeah, I'm in the same boat. I use my personal credit cards and I'm getting more and more into debt. Can you help me?
So the pivot's paid off.
It's coming.
It's coming. Okay. And when did you make the pivot?
I've made it probably over the last 6 months. I started really talking a lot more about it just about a month or so ago. And I've had it in the back of my mind of having some kind of membership, but it really came through fruition just recently in the last 2 months because I wanted to, again, have a way to support the business owner, which those skills can also relate into their personal finances, how I can use my financial journal as a tool for them and with them, and having those reminders. And I realized as a small business owner, accountability is so important. It is just like when you want to have dinner with your friend, let's have dinner, let's have dinner, let's have dinner. It never happens. All of a sudden, she moves out of the city. Gosh, we should have had dinner. Well, if you would have just made that date and had that
Mhm.
accountability with each other of that dinner, I mean, I know it's just dinner, but if you would have had that accountability, it would have been more meaningful. So what I've noticed with entrepreneurs just lately, probably in the last 2 years, accountability is a big thing because as a solopreneur, you are in your own little world. Besides the fact that you are the CEO, the president, the marketing department, the operations department, the sales department, I mean, everything. And nobody
Mhm.
really wants to be the finance department. So let me be that finance department to help you together because with this membership, I'm really excited about it because we most entrepreneurs have no clue how much money they brought in and how much money they spent until what? Tax time.
Mm.
My goal is at the within 15 days after that month, you're going to know exactly how much money came in, where did it come from, where can you repeat? Because again, if you don't know your numbers, you can't make changes in your business. If you know that every time you do a workshop, you get 15 new clients, holy cow, you need to be doing more workshops. Or if you do this, what your numbers are telling you a story, but you're not listening because you're not paying attention to them. So that's where they're going to look at their numbers and they're also going to look at their expenses. I had a conversation with somebody who said, "Yeah, I bought this piece of software that I stopped using, but I didn't want to stop paying for it because if I got out of it, I got out of the founder's rate."
Ah,
And I thought,
okay.
well, you got to make a decision there. But that person's decision was to keep it for a while and now they're coming back to it because they didn't need it at that time, but now they still have it at that better price than so forth. So again, those are some of the choices that you have to make, but that is what I want to have people gain out of the membership is to have a better look at their numbers, which will springboard them into better decisions for their business.
I love it. So tell me more. The membership, is it new? You're just starting
Yes.
this out?
Yes, yes, we are just starting it out. So within the membership, you'll have, like I said, you'll have access to the financial journal and some other business building kit items for you to use for your business, which is obviously more towards the entrepreneur versus the consumer. But also too, I'm going to be having some guest speakers coming in to talk about some different topics. I'm not going to post that onto my YouTube channel. It's going to be in a private membership. So then you get more tips and tricks and tools of the trade so we all can build our businesses better. And like I said, there's so much strength in accountability and community, especially with small business owners and online business owners who are doing it all themselves in their own homes. So
Mhm.
having that community is so important to either have that know, like, and trust already to say, oh yeah, that person used this person, or I learned a little bit about this person. Let me see if I have a good chemistry with that person. Maybe I might hire them for the website or the accounting or different things like that. Because unless you have a superpower for everything, you need to hire out in some sections.
True. Yes, which is a hard decision to make when you don't have a lot of money coming in.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. And then what ends up happening is a lot of people put money into programs or training or anything like that, and they get so frustrated that I just spent $1,000, $2,000, whatever the cost was, and they didn't get the value that they wanted out of it. But sometimes it's not about the information, it's about the action and accountability thereafter. We you can teach something on YouTube till you're blue in the face, but until you actually take action and try it out, it doesn't do anything. So,
Yes. I am absolutely 100% in your camp when it comes to accountability. And it's why in my 6 month program, accountability is probably half of the equation.
yeah.
There is an online course component, there are worksheets, there are AI prompts, but it's that weekly accountability with your cohort that is so important because you have to face them and say, I didn't do that this week. Or in your case, I don't know what I spent last month.
Yep.
You know, you have to own up. That makes
Mm-hmm.
sense.
Yep.
You describe yourself, I love how you describe yourself as the pre-bookkeeper for entrepreneurs who aren't
Yes.
ready for full bookkeeping services yet.
Yes.
So tell us more about the gap in the market that you discovered, and then tell us, how you discovered that gap.
Well, I think just me being an entrepreneur. So for the last 29 years, I have been a direct seller. And I get my 1099. Once I get my 1099, I pull up my information and I'm getting all my things together. But again, I like this stuff. I like the paperwork. I like the organization. I like the numbers. And there's a lot of other people who don't, and they have this big envelope of receipts and they give it to the accountant. And I've networked with some accountants just recently, and I said, "Yeah, I'm basically going to help them organize everything so they can come to you and say, here you go in this nice little platter." Then they're like, "Oh my gosh, that would be wonderful." Because that's what ends up happening is that you're spending more money on your accountant to organize your stuff. But that's not the biggest problem. Okay? So if I did, when I was married, because my ex-husband owned was one of the owners of the business, so I had to I had to give a worksheet, and actually they would send over last year's W-2 or all of the paperwork, the Schedule C and so forth, and I would just fill in what the numbers were from this year. It showed the numbers from last year, and then I would put the numbers in from this year. So I was always excited to get that in the mail, right? Again, I'm just a numbers geek. I love doing those types of things. So um, that, you can tell my little bit my passion there. And it was great because I would get my numbers and I would put all my information down and then I would send it over to the accountant and then they would do all their other stuff. So what I realized though is, okay, I went to Chicago for a conference. I bought new catalogs. I bought new samples during the course of the year. And how did I buy them? I bought them on my personal credit card because my direct sales company was for fun. It was something extra for me to do. It wasn't necessarily a full-fledged business, if you will. So I didn't have a business account of where the money went in and the money went out. So I would go back to all of my credit card statements, print them out, grab a highlighter, and highlight all of the things that I spent money on. It was kind of easy because, most of the times you buy the stuff from the home office and um, it was easy to find. But when I went to conference, it was my hotel and the food that I had out there and all these other things. Or if I went to the store and said, "Oh, I like that. I'm going to take that for my demonstration." I would have to keep that receipt and I would write on the top of the receipt. But that's just me. But other people may not be like that. So that's how I figured out that gap is that there's so many people who are trying to expense off as much as they can for their small business, which is completely legal. You just, if there is a problem, it's between you and the tax man, and you got to show your receipts. Just putting that disclaimer out there because I am not a tax person. I'm not an accountant. I'm not a lawyer. But I want you to keep organized. And even today, when something comes through, like my Zoom, registration comes through, it comes through the email, doesn't come through the mail anymore. I print it off. As soon as I walk from my printer, I go right next to my printer and put it into a filing cabinet, little container, and I walk away and I'm done. But on a monthly basis, I come back and say, okay, let's look at it. Let's look at what did I spend. Now with Zoom, I pay for it over a year. But other things like ChatGPT is $20 a month. So I'm going to have a 20 and a 20 and a 20 and a 20 and a 20. So again, as long as you're looking at those numbers and saying this is approximately what I'm spending, and this is, you talk about having a budget for your business. We don't know what your budget is and how much money you spent unless you look at last year and where did you spend it. So all of these little things add up to, I want to make sure I can put this on my taxes, but the accountant is not going to go to your personal credit card and download all of those reports and highlight the things that they think you use for your business. No, you're spending a lot more money with your accountant than if you would just spend more time with yourself.
Okay. So that using your personal credit cards, is that a problem?
I don't want to be judgmental because, like I said, I've been there before and I've put stuff on my personal credit cards. An option could be if you had a different credit card, if you have multiple credit cards, only use one for your business expenses. So have that renew for your chat GPT and your uh, Zoom and your Canva, anything like that. Put it all in that one credit card. So at the end of the year, or the end of the months as well, you just have one credit card statement and so forth. Sometimes you can't help it when you're in the grocery store and you see something, and you're like, oh, I need that. And, school time comes around and you buy a few school supplies because you need it for your office. That's going to happen. Same as your Amazon, unless you have that extra credit card into the Amazon account when you buy that toner, it's going to go on your personal credit card. So either only use one credit card that you would use for everything, or maybe just one credit card you might use every once in a while for a business expense. That would help it out. But again, if you put everything onto a business only credit card, it does not have to be a business credit card by any means. But at the end of the month, when it says, hey, here's your statement, and it's $1,500, you're like, oh, crud. What the heck did I buy for my business that was $1,500? Right there's going to be an eye opener, let alone all the other expenses that you might have put on a personal credit card or got taken out of the bank account because, nowadays all these extra fees and stuff like that using a debit card sometimes can be cheaper. So just having a system, but it's got to be your system based on your wallet. So,
Yeah, makes sense. I mean, I'm sitting here thinking, again, because of course, my husband and I have been self-employed for like forever, and we keep track of all of that stuff. But, it just boggles my mind that there are people who don't, but I'm really glad that you're there for them because, you get yourself in big trouble. Yeah. I
and then if you
remember,
realize you have an expense and you have to redo your taxes from last year or 2 years ago, gosh, that's time and money.
mhm, yep. I mean, there's a business coach named James Wedmore, and I recall a story he had where one he had like the best sales month that he'd ever had. It was early in his career, and his accountant called and said, "I have good news and bad news. The good news is you have this in sales. The bad news is you spent this in expenses, and the expenses were higher than the sales." And he didn't know that until his accountant called him and said,
I was expecting the bad news is you need to write a $10,000 check for your quarterly taxes.
"Yeah, how many solopreneurs forget to
Mhm.
allocate for that, and then they're kind of stuck."
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And like I said, my ex had he was one of three owners, so they already had an accountant on uh, retainer. So once we did everything, we would get the little receipts, and we had to send in every single quarter taxes because it was based on what we had for the last year. So, you know, that it it hurts, but then when you write that check, it's like, yeah, but we made good money this last year. That's why I'm writing this big check for quarterly
Yeah,
taxes.
it's
So,
like, yes, quarterly taxes, that means I income. Woohoo.
yes. But you're
So,
exactly right. You don't want your expenses to overrule your income.
yes. So I want to look at kind of change direction and look at the future.
Yes,
Is your consulting practice delivering the lifestyle you dreamed of?
it is coming that way. Um, Especially for the fact that the last 2, 3 years I've been on my own. It's so nice just to set my own schedule and work around my client's schedule and so forth. And I'm looking forward. I mean, this is just the beginning. I feel like I'm that toddler that just started to walk, and I'm gaining that momentum because there's so many people out there that are, I hear it all the time. There's so many people who need your services, but they don't want to raise their hand. So I'm looking so forward to this pivot that I can help so many more solopreneurs, and just even having coffee chats with people I meet through networking. They get little nuggets just from our conversation. Just my brain can't stop. I'm always thinking about great ideas for other people because I'm seeing it from the outside. And that's one, like I said, that's one of the things that I like about being in a community with entrepreneurs is somebody else is looking on the outside and saying, "Hey, I suggest you do this." And you're like, "Oh yeah, I thought about that, but was too afraid to." But I'm really looking forward to where the future is coming to help out more solopreneurs in the country and actually in the world. I've got some people I know across the country too, across the
So
world.
are you ahead or behind of where you wanted to be by now?
Um, Maybe a little bit behind, but I feel like I'm more on track than, I haven't gone backwards, if that means anything. I haven't quit. And like I said, I've been an entrepreneur for many, many years. And with my financial coaching, I'm coming up on 5 years because I just love it. And in the past, I've tried to do marketing and different types of sales and things like that. And this is the one that is sticking with me. And it completely makes sense since I'm such a numbers person and I want to help out so many people that are out there who need that love and support that are,
Mhm.
sitting in, like I said, sitting in their own offices by themselves, trying to make this work for themselves.
Where do you see your business in 3 to 5 years?
Oh gosh. I hope to be having a full membership community where people are loving the fact they're actually where they're actually getting excited about doing their numbers. It reminds me of when I was going through a weight loss journey, and I'm like, okay, I've lost all this weight. Now I'm gonna go to the gym. I'm gonna get a personal trainer. And she's like, well, you're gonna do push-ups. I'm like, I hate push-ups. She's like, well, you're gonna learn to love them. I'm like, I'm not gonna learn to love them. About a month later, after she got my arms situated I'm like, Karen, I love doing push-ups because I could. I didn't know how to because I didn't have the muscle, right? We don't have that upper body strength normally as women. So I got to like that. So I actually have one client who's like, Nancy, I just love doing Transfer Tuesdays because I told her about the weekly debt plan, and every Tuesday she'd just send a little bit of money and a little bit of money and a little bit of money. And she said, I look forward to Transfer Tuesdays. I mean, who's going to say that they're looking forward to paying their bills? But that's the momentum that I want to have. Because as I said before, if you don't know your numbers, you don't know how to improve your business in order to keep going further in your business. So
Yeah.
yeah, I'm starting to roll.
Okay. Do you see the membership program as your only thing in
Oh,
three to
no,
five years?
no. I do one-to-one coaching right now. I could see myself doing group coaching. I did try it at one point in time, but again, with the consumer, nobody really wanted to be on camera in order to basically kind of admit that they have debt, which we all knew because we're all in the same boat doing the same thing, saying, let's get out of debt. But with that, I could see myself being on a few more summits to just spread the word and teach people because I think once you have that knowledge and have a system, it's better than just saying, "Oh, I don't know, I can't figure it out." And then they just bury their head in the sand and move on. They don't have a good system. And budgeting doesn't work because if it did, everybody would be grabbing that stuff off of Google and not having any problems with credit card debt. But that's not the case, and you know it. So,
Your mission is to make that better.
yes, yes, money can be easier to deal with once you have a system.
Now, as we start to wrap up, I have a couple, I call them the rapid fire closing questions. What's one book, podcast, or resource that's been invaluable to your consulting practice?
I'm going to say I grabbed this book, The Reframe Your Brain by Scott
Okay.
Adams.
Uh-huh.
And it is just so amazing how we've always been told about negative thoughts and turning negative thoughts. And it's not just negative thoughts, it's just normal concepts. So I had two here. I'm bad with money. You're not bad with money. You I was taught rules that do not match my money moves.
Hmm.
So it's a different reframe because you can't keep continuously beat yourself up about that. And I should already know this, is what people say to themselves. Money is a language, and I'm still learning it.
Oh,
And it's so true because so many people have not been taught that, and they're stuck in their ways. But with this reframe, it was just interesting how you could look at it from a different perspective, and all of a sudden, it just that whole line has totally different meaning. So I really
yeah.
like that book. Yes.
Reframe your brain. Yeah, makes sense. Second question.
Yes.
What's one piece of advice you wish someone had given you when you started consulting?
Invest in the systems from the get-go because I did not realize how challenging being the IT person and the HR person and the marketing person was all going to be. Because if you have that all set up from the beginning, you have a well-oiled machine instead of feeling like you're continuously struggling and struggling and struggling.
Okay. And what what advice would you give to solopreneurs about the systems that about what the basic systems are they should set up?
Definitely, I would definitely have the website, have an email list, have some social media, and a lot of networking. And I've realized just with networking and having that perfect elevator pitch that really grabs people is what's really important. And practice, practice, practice. The more that you get accustomed to your elevator pitch, it comes off your tongue without any issues at all. But refining that before you start practicing is really important so people understand what you do and know how to refer you.
Yes. So if we were at a networking event and I said, "So what do you do? What is your elevator
You're
speech?"
going to put me on the spot, aren't you?
Yep, you just gave the advice that we should
I
know our
know.
elevator speech.
Nice to meet you. I am Nancy Ward. I am a financial coach in Cincinnati, Ohio, and I help solopreneurs untangle their personal and business finances because so many of them don't know if they've made money or have not made money until the end of the year instead of on a monthly basis.
Oh, very smooth, very nice. So, do you find when you're at networking events, do people kind of lean in and say, "Oh, that's interesting. Tell me more"?
Or they say that's me.
Oh, well, then That is a winning elevator speech. If they stop and they say that's me, you've got them. You've got it nailed.
And if it's not them, they definitely know other solopreneurs that just don't want to put the finance hat on.
Love it. And for those listening and watching out there, you just heard a great example of an elevator speech that is effective because she's getting people saying, that's me.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yep.
very good. And now, this last question, and it is the most important question. How can listeners connect with you if they want to know more about you and your work?
Thank you. You can hit my website at weeklydebtplan.com, and all of the socials are Weekly Debt Plan. My LinkedIn is Nancy Ward 1, and that's how you can connect with me.
Perfect. Love it. And we will have your LinkedIn profile URL will be in the show notes. Well,
Great.
actually, all of the links will be in the show
Yes.
notes. So if you
Perfect.
didn't catch that, uh, go to the show notes and we'll have them there. So, Nancy, it has been delightful to talk to you today. Thank you so much for being a guest on the Thriving Through podcast.
Yes,
And
thank
for
you for having me.
all of you listeners and what viewers out there, until next time, keep thriving through. If there's one thing I hope you take away from this conversation with Nancy, it's this: you're not behind, you're not broken, and you don't already know everything about money and business finances. Money is a language you're still learning, and that's perfectly okay. Give yourself permission to be a student of this language. Nancy's advice to invest in systems from the get go is something I hear consistently from successful consultants. Whether it's your financial systems, your CRM, your process, or your marketing systems, setting these up early saves you the constant struggle of trying to build a plane while you're trying to fly it. And if you didn't set them up early, it's never too late to start. Today is always better than tomorrow. I also loved Nancy's elevator pitch demonstration. Did you catch how specific she was about the problem she solves? She doesn't just say, I'm a financial coach. She says, I help solopreneurs untangle their personal and business finances because so many of them don't know if they've made money or not until the end of the year. That specificity is what makes people say, that's me. If you're struggling to get traction at networking events or in conversations with potential clients, revisit your elevator speech. Are you leading with the problem you solve or just describing what you do? If this episode resonated with you and you need help getting clear on your finances, check out the show notes for links to connect with Nancy on LinkedIn and visit her website. And if you found this conversation valuable, I'd be incredibly grateful if you'd share it with another consultant who might need to hear Nancy's message. Until next time, keep thriving through.